a very warm welcome to World Panorama, the show that gives you a 360-degree view of the events that shape your world. I'm Sana Khan. Before we move ahead, here's a look at this week's top stories. Confusion and chaos sweep the Maldives. Former President Mohammad Nasheed calls for international help, alleges conspiracy by police and the army. Rick Santorum's triple win shakes up US Republican race, but will the results change all that much in the presidential race? Death toll from Europe's cold snap crosses 400. Thousands remain cut off. Rescue teams struggle to evacuate people in isolated towns. And tennis giant Novak Djokovic and Kenyan distance runner Vivian Chiriuk win top owners at the Laureus World Sports Award. FC Barcelona wins the glory of the best team. Those were the top stories this week. Our focus is the hectic political developments in the Maldives. With protests on there for weeks now, some say it all happened too soon and unexpectedly. All that aside, one big question on most people's minds is, what next for this young democracy? To discuss the situation in the Maldives, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Pramit Pal Chaudhary. He's foreign editor with Hindustan Times, with me in the studio. Thanks so much, sir, for joining us here. But before we discuss those developments, take a look at this special report.
A dramatic changeover in the island state. President Nasheed, the first elected president of Maldives, allegedly forced to resign at gunpoint. That set of supporters of the ousted pro-democracy president taking to the streets, led by Nasheed himself. Nasheed claimed it was a coup designed by his former vice president and the security forces. With protests that started off on religious grounds reaching a crescendo on Wednesday, crowds of supporters gathered at Nasheed's house as a warrant was issued for his arrest. Tensions in the Maldives escalated weeks ago after Nasheed ordered the military to arrest the top criminal court judge. The newly sworn-in president was defensive over the ousted president's allegations.
And when a chief judge of the courts was unlawfully detained by the military, everybody, I think including international organizations, could not believe that this would happen in a modern democracy.
Malik added that although a warrant had been ordered, it would not be carried out unless necessary for Nasheed's personal safety. Nasheed, in an unaccustomed position of defending himself of acting like a dictator, has called for help from the international community.
I hope that the international community will take note of what is happening in the Maldives, and if they can't do something right now, it certainly will be late tomorrow.
Why do you say that?
We tend to work with facts on the ground, and tomorrow the fact on the ground would be that I will be in jail.
New Delhi too has been keeping a close eye on its long-term strategic partner in the Indian Ocean.
It's our desire and it's our wish that there is a peaceful resolution of all these differences. While Prime Minister was there, he has assured the nation that India is always there to help in the developmental process and agenda.
India realizes the strategic importance of Maldives in Indian Ocean. Political uncertainty can have a long-term impact on India's interests as well.
Let me go across to Mr. Chaudhary with the first question. Mr. Chaudhary, what, in your opinion, are the main reasons for a young democracy like the Maldives sinking into instability?
Well, I think as you said, it's a young democracy, and I think that really is the heart of the issue. Most young democracies are marked by a failure to have what is called a loyal opposition. In other words, the opposition parties and the party in power very often don't have an understanding among each other how to function.
Right.
And this was clearly the case here, where Nasheed came to power in an election, but Gayoom's appointees continued to control both the police and the judiciary in particular, and large chunks of the bureaucracy. Nasheed then attempted to pass policy which was blocked by Gayoom's appointments. But Nasheed was unprepared to either strike a deal with Gayoom, partly because the two of them dislike each other so much. It's a personalized dislike for each other. And Nasheed, to some degree, didn't have the patience because, as you said, it's a young democracy. So the idea that I can just wait for the next election and then the election after that to be able to get my way through is not something that is culturally part of the political norm in the Maldives yet.
One can say that it is indeed a gradual build-up because this has been happening ever since Mr. Nasheed took over in 2008.
Yeah,
could you throw some more light on how, this was like a gradual move and not something very unexpected and sudden?
Well, as you know, that Nasheed came to power, his party had a minority in parliament. He formed an alliance with at least one of the other parties that has now come to power,
right.
the Dwivedi party. And so he is now, he lost the support of that party and a couple of others over the years. So he lost his majority in parliament, so to speak. And I think this is another problem that the Maldives had. It has a presidential system. So the presidency can be controlled by one party, the executive, but the legislature can be held by another party at the same time, which does not exist in the Westminster system. Well, this means that you effectively have the two arms of the government can be held by two different parties and can fight with each other. And so what happens is that he then loses his majority in parliament. He can't pass policy in parliament. He can't pass legislation. He doesn't control the judiciary anyway. It's independent and it's closer to Gayoom than to him. And then in frustration, he then uses he doesn't control the police either because the police are old friends of Gayoom. So he uses the army to arrest the Chief Justice and try to put him away.
That was really the final nail in the
And that was the final straw as far as the system was concerned. And the international reaction was very strong, which is that the assumption is that a justice is not somebody the president can attempt to subvert.
Right. Now that we've mentioned international reaction, let's talk about the way, the international community has taken what's happened in the Maldives. Let's talk a bit about India's stand as well and how various countries have reacted.
India has sought over the years to try to get Nasheed and Gayoom to work together, and it has urged patience on Nasheed. It said that, look, we're a democracy in India and we know how this works, and very often you can't get things the way you want to. And since you've lost your majority in parliament, you shouldn't expect to get very much done. We can see this all the time in India, but we just wait for the next election or try to put together things. Nasheed, who I've met, is a very intelligent person, but he tends to be he's an activist by background. So the idea of compromise doesn't come easy to him. His view is that I've got the right view, therefore all I have to do is stick it out, and as I have done as he did against Gayoom's dictatorship for over 20 years, and eventually things will come my way. So it hasn't come easy to him, and he hasn't really understood this. And the Indian government has been trying, in many ways, to try to train him on this, get to understand how this works. And we've only been partially successful. So when eventually the army was called in to arrest the Chief Justice, and the police mutinied on this issue, and then elements of the army got involved, Indian diplomats in Malé called in and attempted to strike a compromise before things got out of hand.
Right.
And so the argument was that, okay, you told Nasheed, he agreed to step down, I gather. We will form a national unity government of Gayoom and yourself. Elections are barely, I think, 18 or 20 months away.
Right.
So you just let the government stagger on until 20 months or hold an early election and get it solved. But this fell apart because Nasheed decided that he would, once he got in front of his supporters, I think the activist in him took over and the politician disappeared, and he decided that he would instead turn on the government and fight from the streets.
Right. So, Mr. Chaudhary, just to wrap up the discussion, what would be the larger implications of what we've seen in the Maldives? Well,
the Maldives is a case for India we have to succeed. Doesn't matter whether it's Gayoom or Nasheed, the entire political spectrum of the Maldives is essentially pro-Indian. They look to New Delhi for guidance. So if we can't ensure stability and democracy in the Maldives, then any real Indian aspirations to be a regional power are really a waste of time. Second, the Maldives is a Sunni Muslim majority country, a very moderate one. But our experience has been in places like Pakistan and to a lesser extent Bangladesh, that when the democratic structures in Muslim majority nations come under question and the democratic groups essentially fight with each other, the result is a space for radical Islam to move into. Maldives has a very small fringe radical Islamic area, and it's an area we'd prefer not to see grow because that may have potential threats for us. So there were reports in Indian intelligence that Al-Qaeda, for example, had tried to set up take over some of the islands in the Maldives and use them as a base. So these are things that we need to try to preserve and ensure does not happen.
Okay, Mr. Chaudhary, thanks so much for giving us time in discussing the situation in Maldives. Time for a very short break. U.S. elections on the other side, victories in Colorado, Minnesota and Missouri revive Santorum and raises doubts about Mitt Romney as a potential nominee. Stay with us. Welcome back. The latest on the U.S. elections now. It was a hat-trick run for former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum on Wednesday, where he won the Republican caucuses in 3 states, reshaping the party's primary race and staking out his claim to be the main alternative to frontrunner Mitt Romney. Santorum's victory in Missouri, Minnesota and Colorado caucuses comes as a setback to Romney, who after 2 consecutive wins in Florida and Nevada was considered as the frontrunner for the Republican primary.
Former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum breathed new life into his campaign the night of 7th Feb by winning the Republican presidential caucuses in 3 states, Missouri, Minnesota and Colorado.
Conservatism is alive and well in Missouri and Minnesota.
Santorum's campaign got a massive dose of momentum after beating him by double digits in Minnesota, a state Romney won in 2008, stunning him in Colorado, another state in Romney's column in 2008, and trouncing him in Missouri, one of the country's biggest battleground states.
This was a good night for Rick Santorum. I want to congratulate Senator Santorum, wish him the very best. We'll keep on campaigning down the road, but I expect to become our nominee with your help. So I want to congratulate all of my fellow Republicans, particularly Senator Santorum, and I look forward to the contest to come.
Ron Paul spoke to supporters in Golden Valley, Minnesota, and vowed to continue his campaign.
Believe it or not, we did very well tonight and have a very, very strong second place, and it's going to continue.
53-year-old Santorum has so far won 4 states, including his razor-thin victory over Romney in Iowa. The Santorum campaign believes that Tuesday's strong showing will be a huge boost to its fundraising efforts, even scheduling its next stop in Texas.
Hard to stand.
With several districts controlled by rebel forces, Syria's 3rd largest city, Homs, is a major focus of unrest against President Bashar al-Assad's rule. Scores have been killed since the army started an assault there last week. And the international community is also struggling to find a way out to resolve this crisis after Russia and China blocked a text drafted by the Arab and European countries just last week.
Footage like this uploaded to social media websites gives what Syrian opposition activists say is a taste of life in civilian areas of Homs. Forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad stepped up their bombardment on Thursday. The activists say dozens are dying every day under sustained shelling. Some are comparing with the bombing of Benghazi in Libya that triggered international action. Iran said it would continue to support Syria following the release of 11 Iranian hostages on February 7th.
We will keep supporting Syrian people and President Dr. Bashar al-Assad in the reforms process. Facing any foreign intervention, fighting terrorism and re-establishing security in Syria, that is considered the heart of resistance.
From the first day we said.
Turkey is now calling for international moves to protect civilians after Russia and China's veto of a less interventionist UN Security Council resolution urging Assad to step down. The Security Council is now considering an Arab League plan for a joint observer mission in Syria. An Arab League mission collapsed after allegations that Damascus was refusing to cooperate with it. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says action is needed fast.
I fear that the appalling brutality we are witnessing in homes with the heavy weapons firing into civilian neighborhoods is a grim harbinger of wars to come.
Despite a promise to Russia to halt the bloodshed, the bombardment of Homs shows no sign of ending. The activists say at least 90 tanks and other armored vehicles, along with 1,000 soldiers, have been redeployed to Homs from other areas.
Now moving on, the overall death toll from the cold snap that began 11 days ago topped 400, while forecasters warned there would be no early let-up to the freezing weather. As deaths and disruptions mount across Europe and elsewhere from the big chill, World Panorama takes a look at the situation closely.
Europeans across the continent were digging out from heavy snow after a week of bitter cold in which the number of dead, most of them homeless, continued to rise by the day. The Siberian cold that is sweeping across most of Europe has also taken its icy grip on Switzerland, where several days of temperature around -10 degrees Celsius in the daytime have caused much of the shores of Lake Geneva to be covered with thick layers of ice. London's Heathrow Airport, the world's busiest air hub by passenger traffic, cancelled a third of the day's flights, while much of Britain was blanketed in snow, leaving drivers stranded on roads overnight. In Italy, which reported a 7th victim, snow-covered Rome was virtually paralysed. Thousands of people were trapped on trains and the weather emergency sparked runs on supermarkets. A mountain rescue team was left stranded on Tuesday in the village in South Croatia while trying to evacuate an elderly woman from a snowbound village. Even the prospect of warmer temperatures has officials worried. Bulgaria declared a day of mourning on Tuesday after melting snow caused a dam to collapse, killing 8 people. Officials and witnesses describe a wall of water sweeping through the main street, washing away homes and cars. 10 straight days of heavy snowfall, coupled with the northeasterly gale, has created traffic chaos and forced schools to shut in the Romanian capital of Bucharest. Below freezing temperatures in France left a frosty veneer on many of the country's waterways and formed icicles and fountains. The chill prompted authorities to issue severe weather warnings for the eastern part of the country, as well as concerns that the electrical system could be overloaded. The cold spell is forecast to last until at least the middle of the week.
With that, time for a very short break, but for all you Spider-Man fans, your wait will end soon as The Amazing Spider-Man returns this July. Thanks for staying with us here on World Panorama. Let's take a quick look at some of the other developments across the globe in our next report.
Indian Foreign Minister S.M. Krishna met with his Chinese counterpart Yang Jiechi in Beijing on February the 8th as part of a 3-day visit to the country. Krishna and Jiechi discussed Russia and China's veto of a United Nations Security Council resolution over the ongoing violence in Syria. The US resolution to restrict oil trade with Iran was also brought up in the meeting, along with relations with Afghanistan. Krishna also held talks with 9th-ranked Politburo member Zhao Yongkang on ways to improve bilateral relations and regional cooperation. Investigators in southwestern Ontario are trying to determine the cause of one of the most deadly vehicle accidents in Canadian history. A crash between a flatbed truck and a van carrying migrant farm workers on rural crossroads in southwestern Ontario on Monday killed 10 migrant workers from Peru and a Canadian citizen. 3 people from the van survived the crash but suffered serious to life-threatening injuries. The death toll from a factory collapse in Lahore, Pakistan has risen to 20 on Wednesday as rescuers continue to search for victims trapped in the rubble. The 3-story building of a pharmaceutical company collapsed to the ground following a gas explosion.
With that, it's now time to gear up for some sports action in our next segment.
India's World Cup winning cricket star Yuvraj Singh should be able to resume training in May after undergoing chemotherapy for a cancerous tumor in the United States. This is what his doctor said on Monday. The doctor said he was confident Yuvraj would recover from the malignant tumor located between his lungs. It was coming out day for many 2012 Formula One challengers, including the Sauber F1 team, which revealed the new Sauber C31 Ferrari at the Jerez de la Frontera circuit in Spain this week. The reveal took place ahead of the official Formula One pre-season testing that gets underway on Tuesday. Former world champion Kimi Raikkonen was the fastest on the first day of pre-season testing at Jerez in Spain. The Flying Finn, who is returning to Formula One after 3 years in rallying, lived up to his name as preparations for the 2012 season intensified. Raikkonen, driving for Lotus, headed Paul Di Resta of Force India as some of Formula One's less heralded teams enjoyed a strong day with Nico Rosberg of Mercedes in third. The winners of the 2012 Laureus World Sports Awards were unveiled on February 6th in London. Among the highlights were a record-equaling 4th Laureus Award for US surfer Kelly Slater and a double success for Northern Ireland golf, with both Darren Clarke and Rory McIlroy being honoured. FC Barcelona at last won the Laureus Team of the Year award after their 4th nomination. Serbia's Novak Djokovic was acclaimed Laureus World Sportsman of the Year, while the Sportswoman of the Year award went to Kenya's extraordinary distance runner Vivian Cheruiyot, who won both 5,000 and 10,000 meters gold medals at the World Championships in Daegu.
So, what's the latest buzz in the world of entertainment? Watch this to know all of that. Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds hit the red carpet in New York for the premiere of the new action thriller Safe House. In the movie, Washington plays a former CIA agent who has been placed in a safe house manned by Reynolds' character. After the secret location is raided by rebels, their characters flee the bunker in search of a secure location.
Welcome to the best exotic marigold hotel.
Dame Judi Dench and Dev Patel brought an Indian adventure to a chilly London with the world premiere of their new film, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel.
Your first time in India?
Yes. This country seems rather more civilized than one originally thought.
Would you like some of this? I believe it's called aloo tarparata.
Now, if I can't pronounce it, I don't want to eat it.
Welcome to the best exotic marigold hotel.
The movie, directed by John Madden, sees a group of retirement-age Brits move to India to see out their elderly years in colourful Jaipur. Tom Wilkinson, Bill Nighy and Penelope Wilton were also among the cast out on the red carpet for the event at the Curzon Mayfair in London. A legendary superhero is back on the big screen with a reboot of the Spider-Man franchise, The Amazing Spider-Man. The film will focus on an untold story that tells a different side of the Peter Parker biography and stars Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Rhys Ifan, Dennis Leary, Campbell Scott Irfan Khan, with Martin Sheen and Sally Field. The film will open in theatres everywhere in 3D on the 3rd of July this year. That's all we have for you in this edition of World's Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with the latest world news and events. Till then, enjoy the visuals of Russian graffiti art. Stay tuned.